Meg. Welcome back to the podcast and Happy New Year! Yesterday was New Year's Day. It's officially 2025. I hope everyone had a good time celebrating New Year's Eve, whether you stayed in, went out, didn't even make it till midnight. I hope you had a good time. I personally just had a couple people over, just like hanging out, very chill, playing like card games and talking, but we did make it to the ball drop and I did eat my 12 grapes. I did choke on number 11 and barely made it to 12, but I made it out alive. So today's episode is going to kind of piggyback off of last week's episode where I talked about my sort of reflections on 2024 and intentions for 2025. I really want to focus today on how I approach mindset shifting. Obviously, how you think about something has a really big impact on your life and how you execute things. And so I've really been trying to, I feel like, shift my mindset for the past year, and there's definitely things I've done that have helped and things that, I don't know, maybe I heard on like a TikTok or something that just doesn't work for me. So take this all with a grain of salt and like figure out what works for you. But yeah, I think your mindset has such a huge impact on like your everyday life, and I don't always have the best mindset and I need to like work on that, but also it's a learning experience and it takes time and it's not going to happen overnight. So as much as I'm sitting here saying like I need to work on it, I also know like I need to have patience and that it's gonna take bit by bit to actually sort of restructure my mindset around things. I know in the last episode I talked a little bit about how I have just been really struggling with my depressive episodes and feeling really hopeless, and like I just know obviously with my bipolar, when I am depressed, even when it does get better, there's always going to be another depressive episode. It's never really going to be the last one. And so that can be very overwhelming. And I think I need to stop thinking about it that way, as much as it is like, yeah, I need to be honest with myself that it does happen. I don't think I need to dwell on it as much. I think if I put more focus into figuring out what works for me when I am depressed and what, like, kind of what helps bring me out of it. Obviously there's only so much you can do, but the little things do make a big difference. I think if I focus on that a bit more this year, that can really help. And I think I've talked about this before in one of the episodes, but before I was diagnosed with bipolar, I was really struggling with anxiety and I was having like crazy panic attacks. I went to the hospital for them. I was like throwing up every night. And my anxiety has definitely taken like a back seat the past like 2 years, just because I feel like the depression has just been stronger. But I definitely still have anxiety. But one thing that I just started doing, I think like probably about a year and a half ago, is I literally ask myself either like out loud, usually when I'm alone, or like in my head, like, are you okay? Is like a sort of like self-check-in, and like immediately like my answer is like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't know when I started to do this exactly or why. I just remember like a couple months ago, or maybe like a year ago, really catching myself doing it a lot, and I was like, oh, this actually does really help. And I have no idea where I picked it up from, but I just kept asking myself, are you okay? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine. Like even if I was feeling physically not okay, if I'm like sitting in my room stressing out about homework, there is no actual harm being done to me, and like I am perfectly fine, and like the homework will get done and it's not the end of the world. I think it's just a good way to sort of like nip the negative thoughts and really redirect it. So that's been like my number one thing that I have really implemented in my life, like pretty much daily, that's helped me shift my mindset around anxiety. I will say like the depressive side of things, still working on that. And even like regardless of like talking about specific mental health issues, I think shifting your mindset on just like life events or maybe like drama or just relationship stuff, it can really be helpful. I am someone who definitely like ruminates on things. I am like the queen of never letting anything go, and that's definitely something I want to work on this year. But I have been slowly getting better, and I think some of it is time, like especially some of these bigger things that I've gone through that have really had a lasting impact on me. I think time truly has probably done the most help in like just distancing myself from the people in these events or the areas or whatnot. has helped. But I think also, like, for example, if you are going through a tough time with a friend and maybe you guys aren't speaking anymore, regardless of who in the situation feels they were wronged or if it was mutual, it can still really suck. And I have definitely had this where it was like I was the one who like needed to step away, and it still sucked, but also it was like I don't know where I'm going with this. Actually, give me a minute. I definitely think when it's with people you care about, it can be really hard to let things go, and you just have to remember that the people that you really love and care about and want in your life, like, you do anything for them. And if there's someone who is not doing the same, like giving the same energy back to you, that's kind of your first sign of like, okay, maybe they don't like see me as like someone essential in their life, which can really hurt to admit and like really suck to realize. But it does give you an opportunity to like have more appreciation for the people who do make you feel so welcomed and so loved and so needed, that if you just focus on like this person not really caring as much, it can really drag you down. But if you focus more on like, okay, well, they might not, but like I have these people who like love me and like I'm gonna put my energy into them, like why waste time worrying about someone who's not worrying about you? And it does hurt, like I think especially when it's more of like a romantic situation too, it can really hurt when you're like, okay, but I care so much about this person and I like this person so much and they don't like me the same way. That's a huge hit to your ego. Like, we've all been there. It sucks. You're gonna cry about it, and like it is what it is. It's gonna happen in life, unfortunately. But I think if you really dwell on the whole like, well, what about me is it that they don't like what's wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with you. There are just people that you don't click with. And I think once you kind of move out of like high school and college where everyone's just trying to like have a big friend group, and you actually start dealing with like real world shit, you realize that you only want the people who are like really there for you to be around you. And the other people who maybe aren't clicking with you as much, like their opinions will stop mattering so much. Like, there are people now where like if I think about a certain situation, yes, it still hurts, but I used to keep myself up at night sobbing and throwing up and being like, what did I do wrong? Why are they acting like this towards me, like friends or whatever? And I have this conversation with my friends a lot about like, okay, but like what if I was being crazy? And I think a lot of that comes from my bipolar and just not really trusting my own emotions and stuff, which we're gonna work on in therapy. But literally yesterday I was with my friend and she was like, but you weren't, like she was there through this like these specific situations that I really kind of ruminate on still, and was like, you weren't, like you had every right to be pissed off, you had every right to take a step back, like you handled it perfectly fine. And I think it's hard to know exactly, like, I don't know, I think self-doubt really impacts your mindset. But if you just look at it of like, oh, well, it is what it is. Like, some of the stuff that I'm talking about where I'm ruminating on happened 2 years ago. And it's like, there is nothing about that situation that's going to change. One, I know that I do not want these people back in my life. Two, I don't interact with them. I have not interacted with them in so long. And even when I have tried to like talk it out with someone, there's never any clarity. At this point, it's just, it is what it is. And that is such like a hard thing to really sink in. It's a lot easier said than done, but it truly is, like, it is what it is. Like, you can't go back and erase time. You can't take back things that were said. And honestly, if you're in a position, like, I know I didn't do anything like crazy wrong in the situation. I just think I had a lot going on and I probably was very emotional. It's kind of where I get wrapped up in it, where I'm like, okay, was I just like being too much? And the truth of the matter is like, I was dealing with some really hard shit, so even if I was really emotional, at this point, I don't give a fuck. Like, I was going through things that like not nobody knew about, but nobody knew the like extent of how bad some certain situations were. So like, if I got a little upset and I cried or I like sent a paragraph, who gives a fuck? Like, it was 2 years ago and I just need to like stop thinking about it. Like I said, it's a lot easier said than done, and I think the best way to practice your mindset shifting is to redirect your thought to something else. So if I think about, like, for example, a big situation that really keeps me up at night is kind of like the end of when I was at college. A lot of things went wrong. I've talked about it before, and I will think about it and like stick with it and be like, okay, but did I overreact? Like, why did this person say this? Why did this person not do this? And that's just what happened. Like, you cannot change, excuse me, you cannot change the past. And I think it's really good to, even if you want to like think about a certain situation, like for me, college, it took a while for me to be able to think about it and still like realize that like I really loved where I went to school and I had a lot of fun there, because like it was almost so tainted by how it ended. But then again, I can think about college and remember all the good times. I can remember my one roommate that I'm still friends with now, that like we were random roommates, and I can still remember the people from my program, or the fun memories of like going out and just the late night, like going to the dining hall, and like all these little things. I don't need to focus on like the big blow up of my college experience, and that has definitely been helping. Like, I still talk to plenty of people from college, and I went to school in a different state, so I don't get to see them very often, but every time I am like in contact with them, it like makes me so happy, because I'm so glad that like those good things came out of it. And I think it's a big practice of gratitude, which I'm not going to sit here and say like pull out your gratitude journal and like do your whole thing, because I don't do that, but I do think it is essential to shifting your mindset. And if you're really focusing on the negative, find something in that certain situation or area of life that you can be grateful for. Like, maybe you're stressed out because all of your friends are in a relationship and you're not, and maybe you have had bad relationship experiences. I sometimes get like that, where I'm like, okay, like I'm not really going out and talking to people right now because I have trust issues, and it's like a whole other thing. But also my friends are all like going out, and they'll tell me they're like meeting people and having fun, and that's great for them, and I like love that for them. But sometimes I do be like, oh well, like why can't I do that? And it's like, because I have raging anxiety that I need to work through first. But it's also good to think about in a sense of like, okay, well while they're doing that, I'm also working on myself, so when I do want to do that, I'm the best version of myself. And like, I truly think I have become so confident over the last year in like my personality, which used to be such an insecurity for me. I used to think I was the worst, most annoying, like insufferable person on earth, which is such an awful thing to think about. And I think now when I like talk about my struggles with depression, people think it's like a self-love thing, and it's not. It's just a chemical imbalance thing in my brain. But you have to redirect. So like, I can sit here and be mopey and sad that like I'm not having that experience right now, but I also know I don't want it right now, because I'm not fully ready to like fully go into it. Like, I don't want to half-ass making new friends and meeting new people. So I redirect and be like, okay, but like I am getting back my hobbies and finding my interests again, which is going to make it easier to talk to people about things, and like not just sit there and be like, oh yeah, I've been depressed for 2 years, I haven't done anything, because that's really what it is. Like, I don't know how to be around people very much right now, because I just haven't had many positive things to contribute to a conversation. So I'm working on it. But like I said, a lot of it is just mindset shifting and redirecting, and it's definitely hard and it takes practice, and there's going to be times where you can sit and ruminate, and I think that's fine. I think a big thing that comes into play though is like not letting yourself have the victim complex for too long. And I think victim mentality is one of the worst things you can do to yourself. And I'm not saying that you're not allowed to like have a pity party here and there. I'm definitely known to like have a pity party and like really like feel bad for myself, which is fine, I think, in situations where you genuinely are the victim. I think it's hard to justify it all the time, Because yeah, I can sit here and cry about awful things that have happened, and like, do I have every right to? Yes, but it just makes me dwell on it longer and stay in that negative spot. And like I said, I have a really hard time coping with the fact that like I'm gonna struggle with depression for the rest of my life. It's just what it is. And I can sit here and be like, ugh, like, woe is me, my life is so harder than everyone else. But like, reality is, it's not. Yes, I go through some hard things that not everybody does, but so does everyone else. Like, everyone has their own shit. I think the only time where it's like, okay, maybe mine like takes the cake is when it's like getting to like a crisis level. And that happens to anyone, like anyone who is like physically in harm's way, that obviously takes the cake. Like, if someone's really sick, if someone's really hurt, like, their problems, like when you're physically in harm's way, I think that does make your problems bigger than like Susie's upset about her boyfriend Chad sleeping with his best friend Brad. Like, that stuff doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But I think it's fine to sit there and ruminate for a moment. I think you also need to learn how to check yourself, because even when I am really down and struggling, sometimes I have a hard time finding the balance between checking myself and letting myself be upset, because there's times where I let myself be upset for too long, and then there's times where I'm too hard on myself, and it's like, girl, like, you have been through it, like, let yourself cry. It just takes practice and patience. But I do think the victim mentality is also something that is a big red flag in other people, in terms of like little shit. Like, my number one pet peeve is when people can never see their own fault in a situation, or never accept it. I think it's totally fine if like maybe you don't see your wrongdoings right away. Obviously, if you knew it was wrong, you probably wouldn't have done it. So like, maybe it takes a little bit for you to pick up like, oh, I could have handled that better. Totally fine. That's normal. Like, that's what life is. Like, you're gonna learn from your mistakes. I think it's really frustrating when someone maybe helps bring it to your attention, and like, you still can't accept that like maybe you screwed up a little bit, and you just sit there being like, well, it's their problem and I'm not the problem, and like, if they're mad at me, then that's on them. Like, I keep seeing these TikToks where it's like, if someone's mad at you, you won. And I don't really get it. I think it's very easy to tell when someone is mad at you because they're insecure and it's not coming from a genuine place of like, you hurt them. But if you genuinely hurt somebody, you did not win. Like, you do not have the upper hand in the situation. You look like a shit person, especially if that's how you're approaching it. And I've definitely have met several people where like, I don't know, I had this one situation in college where someone was telling me that their girlfriend broke up with them, and they were like, it's just not fair, like, they hadn't been dating very long, didn't give a fair chance. This person genuinely wronged them, like, so wronged them, and like put them in such a tough spot. And it drove me crazy listening to them talk about it, because I was like, you are the problem. How do you not see that you are the problem? But I also wasn't close enough with them to like really tell them like how it is. So I don't know. It's definitely a difficult thing to navigate. But I think if you check yourself every now and then and be like, okay, am I having the victim mentality maybe a little too much? Am I being a little bit too easygoing on myself and not like pushing myself? Because there's situations where I've had the victim mentality, like I said it before, like I've sat and sulked and like been like, poor me, or like I've sat and been like, I can't do this, like final straw, like I'm done, like I need a fucking break. And it's fine to have those moments, but I've definitely, those moments have carried on for longer periods of time for me personally. And I think my dad is always like the first person to check me, honestly, and he's like, life is tough, kid, like grow a pair. And as much as it sucks sometimes to hear, and it's not always what I need to hear, it does help me in other moments, like remember when he says stuff like that to kind of snap me out of it. And he says it from a place of love. Like, I want to be very clear, my father is not like a fucking asshole. All, well, love him, but we all have our moments. I think like it's important to know it's coming from a good place, and I think that's why it's hard sometimes to like check other people, because you want to make sure it comes from a good place. I don't know, man, people are sensitive. I'm one of them. I'm very sensitive. But yeah, I think having a victim mentality is just gonna hold you back, and it can apply to big things, which I think is like fine. Obviously, if you are a victim in a situation, like, let yourself feel that, but don't let it consume you. And then in terms of little stuff where it's like, I don't know, maybe you had a goal of like wanting to read a certain number of books and you maybe read one, and you're like, well, it's just not my fault because I just didn't have time. It's like, realistically, you have time. You could wake up 5 minutes earlier, you could do this, like, you could say no to this plan and read your book if it's something that really matters to you. This is such a stupid example. I'm just like thinking of something like small. Or if your like resolution this year is like go to the gym, go to the gym. Like, if you have access to the gym, make time to go. Stop scrolling on your phone. Like, and I'm saying this to myself right now, like, I'm not trying to yell at anybody. And make time. Like, I'm going to the gym right after I finish recording this, and I'm not, that's like not negotiable. Obviously it's the beginning of the year, so I'm feeling very motivated, but I need to keep making sure I'm scheduling it in ahead of time. I think there's a lot of situations where you can just snap into victim mentality because maybe you didn't do what you said you were going to do. And I think the best way to build a healthy mindset and become more confident in yourself is by having discipline and like doing what you say you're going to do. I don't know, whenever I accomplish something that I said I'm gonna do, like, it really does give me a boost. I feel like I've just kind of been rambling about a whole bunch of different things, but I think the main takeaways I wanted to focus on is like going into the new year, really, yes, focus on your goals that are tangible, but also like make sure you're taking care of your mindset, because I love the quote where it's like, do it tired, do it happy, do it sad, do it mad, because that truly is like how you improve upon things. Like, you can't let your mood dictate how you're gonna go about your day sometimes. So I think the main takeaway is just like check in with your mindset and really make that the priority, that like keeping your mindset in a good space is going to keep you more proactive towards your goals for the year. And also, obviously, if it's like little things are going to come up, you're going to have bad days, and I think it's fine to like cry about it, but don't let that distract you from your goals. Like, don't have the victim mindset to a point where it distracts you. And also be on the lookout for people who do have that victim mindset all the time, because you become the people you surround yourself with. And I don't know about you, but like, I don't want to be that type of person, so just keep that in mind. And yeah, I've just been thinking about this a lot, and I wanted to talk about it because I need to remind myself of it sometimes too. But with all that being said, I hope you have a wonderful start to your new year. I hope you have an amazing afternoon, evening, night, whenever you're listening to this, and remember to take care of yourself. I'll see you next time. Bye.